It was another quiet morning at Millie's Diner, a small roadside cafe at the edge of town where the scent of fresh coffee and baked biscuits greeted the dawn before anyone else did. The neon sign flickered softly against the mist, and inside, the first few chairs scraped across the linoleum floor as tired workers started their shifts. Among them was Lila Thompson, a 27-year-old waitress with tired eyes but a heart so gentle that even strangers could feel its warmth. She'd been working at Millie's since high school, through heartbreaks, through rent struggles, through nights when the tips barely covered bus fare, but every morning, she showed up with a smile and a little hope that maybe life would smile back. That hope seemed small, but it never truly went out. Around 6:15 every morning, right as the sunlight spilled across the counter, the doorbell above the diner door would jingle, and in would come Mr. Harlan, a frail old man dressed in the same gray tweed jacket, his cane tapping rhythmically as he made his slow way to his usual booth by the window. His face was wrinkled and tired, but his eyes, those clear blue eyes, held stories too deep to be told in one lifetime. He ordered the same breakfast every day, 1 black coffee, 1 slice of apple pie, and a single egg, sunny side up. Most of the younger staff ignored him, calling him the ghost, because he barely spoke and always tipped a single dollar, neatly folded under the edge of his plate. But Lila never treated him like a ghost. She greeted him like family, sometimes warming his coffee twice before he even asked, and always asked how he was feeling, even when his only reply was a polite nod. Something about him stirred her curiosity. He carried an air of quiet sadness, as if he'd lost everything but still refused to stop living. Sometimes, she caught him staring out the window for long stretches, as if waiting for someone who never came. One morning, when the wind was particularly cold, she noticed he didn't have gloves. Without thinking, she poured an extra cup of coffee on the house and slipped an old knitted pair she'd brought from home onto the booth seat beside him. He looked up, surprised, his lips trembling as he whispered, "You remind me of someone I used to know." She smiled gently, "Then I'll take that as a good thing." From that day on, the old man's eyes carried something different when he saw her, a faint spark of life. He began to speak more, sometimes telling stories from long ago about a mansion on the hill, about gardens filled with roses, about music echoing through corridors and the laughter of a woman who once danced in the rain. Lila loved those mornings, listening as she refilled his cup, though she noticed how his stories always ended with silence. "You ever go back there?" she once asked softly. "No," he said, shaking his head, "some places are better left to the ghosts." He smiled then, the saddest smile she had ever seen. Time went on, and as weeks turned to months, his health began to fail. Some mornings, he came in with trembling hands, and Lila would gently guide him to his seat. Other times, she had to cut his food for him, pretending it was nothing. She even started packing him small lunch boxes to take home, labeling them with sticky notes, "Eat this before noon, don't skip your meds," because she feared no one else would remind him. Her co-workers teased her about wasting time on a dying man, but Lila didn't care. There was something sacred about kindness. Maybe it was because she knew what loneliness felt like. Her mother had passed years ago, her father left when she was 10, and she'd grown up believing that sometimes the world forgets good people, so she refused to forget anyone. One night, near closing, she found Mr. Harlan sitting longer than usual, staring at his reflection in the coffee's surface. "You ever wonder if people notice when you're gone?" he asked. "Every day," she answered honestly. "But maybe the right people do." He smiled faintly and said, "You have a good heart, Lila. Don't let this world change that." Then he left, slower than usual, the cane tapping fading into the night. The next morning, he didn't come. Nor the next. Or the next. For the first time in months, the booth by the window sat empty, the coffee mug unclaimed. Lila tried to ignore the ache in her chest, telling herself maybe he was sick, maybe he'd be back. But as days passed, she began leaving a fresh cup there every morning anyway, out of habit, or maybe hope. Her boss frowned but said nothing. 3 weeks later, as rain battered the windows and the morning crowd trickled in, something unusual happened. Around 8 a.m., the bell above the diner door rang, but instead of the frail old man, 4 men in black suits walked in, their shoes clicking against the floor like thunder. The entire diner went silent. Behind them came 2 lawyers, carrying leather briefcases, and another man holding an envelope sealed in deep green wax. They scanned the room until one of them said in a firm tone, "We're looking for Miss Lila Thompson." Lila froze mid-pour, the coffee pot trembling in her hand. "That's me," she said cautiously. The taller lawyer nodded, stepped forward, and said, "We represent the estate of Mr. Arthur Harlan." The name hit her like a wave. Arthur? She'd never known his first name. The lawyer continued, his voice echoing through the diner, "Mr. Harlan passed away last week, but before his passing, he made specific instructions that we deliver a message and a document to you, personally." The customers turned to stare as one of the bodyguards stepped closer, holding out the envelope. Lila wiped her trembling hands on her apron and took it slowly. The paper felt heavy, the kind that carried more than words. Inside, she found a handwritten note on elegant stationery. It said, "For the only person who remembered I was still alive. You gave me warmth when I had nothing left to give. Now, it's my turn." Below it was a small key attached with a ribbon, and an address, Harlan Estate, 22 Crescent Hill Road, the mansion from his stories. "He wanted you to have this," the lawyer said quietly. "And we've been instructed to escort you there." The diner erupted in whispers. Her boss nearly dropped a plate. "What's going on, Lila?" someone whispered. But she was speechless. Her hands shook as she looked at the key again. The lawyers stood waiting, the bodyguards watching in silence, as if protecting something far greater than wealth. I don't understand," she stammered. "You will," the lawyer said softly. He made sure of it. And as Lila removed her apron, heart pounding, and stepped into the rain outside, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. The black car door opened, the lawyer gestured her inside, and as the diner door closed behind her, the empty booth by the window seemed to smile, a silent farewell from the man who'd once sat there, waiting for a little kindness. The drive to Crescent Hill was silent, except for the soft hum of rain against the car roof. Lila sat in the back seat, hands clasped around the old man's letter as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. Every now and then, she glanced out the tinted window and saw the town disappear behind her, the diner, the street lamps, the familiar corners she'd walked every day of her life. Ahead, fog blanketed the road until, finally, through the gray drizzle, the mansion appeared. It was just as Mr. Harlan had described, massive stone walls wrapped in ivy, tall windows gazing down like quiet sentinels, and an iron gate creaking open as the car approached. She could almost hear his voice in her head, "Some places are better left to the ghosts." But now, she was driving straight into one. As the car stopped in front of the grand double doors, one of the bodyguards stepped out and opened her door. "Miss Thompson," the lawyer said gently, holding an umbrella for her, "he wanted you to see this place exactly as it was." They guided her up the stone steps, and when the doors opened, the scent of aged wood and roses flooded her senses. The house wasn't empty, it was alive in its silence, filled with portraits, books, and memories that whispered in every corner. Her shoes clicked softly on marble floors, her reflection caught in crystal chandeliers. "He lived here alone?" she asked. The lawyer nodded. "For the last 20 years. After his wife passed and his son left, he never opened the doors to anyone. Except you." Lila stopped in her tracks. "Except me?" "He wrote that you were the first person in decades to speak to him without expecting something in return." Her eyes stung. All those mornings, all those cups of coffee, she just wanted to be kind. She never imagined they had meant that much. The lawyer led her into a study where the old man's picture sat on the desk. His eyes twinkling with the same distant kindness she remembered. There was also a small black box with a golden lock and an envelope with her name written in that same careful handwriting. "He wanted you to open this privately," the lawyer said, handing it to her. When they left her alone, the silence pressed in, heavy but tender. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside was another letter, longer, written with shaky but deliberate strokes. "My dear Lila," it began. "If you're reading this, I have already joined my wife. Don't be sad. You gave an old man something even money couldn't buy, dignity and warmth. I had everything once. Wealth, power, a family name that opened every door. But when my wife died and my son turned his back on me, I lost myself. I came to that diner every morning not for the food, but because it was the only place I could feel seen again. You, my child, reminded me that kindness still exists. You spoke to me as if I mattered. And in those small moments, you gave me back my humanity." Lila's tears began to fall freely now, the words blurring. "I know you work hard and life has not been kind to you. So I leave to you not just my gratitude, but my home, my business shares, and enough to ensure you never have to serve another cup of coffee unless you wish to. But most importantly, I leave you this box. Inside is something my wife once gave me when I was a young man with nothing but dreams. She told me, 'Arthur, pass this only to someone who still believes in people.' Today, that someone is you." Lila placed the letter down and reached for the black box. The golden lock clicked open easily, as if it had been waiting for her. Inside was a delicate silver locket and a faded photograph, a young Arthur standing beside a woman in a waitress uniform, her smile radiant, her eyes so familiar it made Lila gasp. She flipped the photograph over, and in elegant cursive it read, "Evelyn May, the waitress who believed in me." Lila's breath caught in her throat. His wife was a waitress, she whispered, realization dawning like sunlight through storm clouds. The same compassion that had changed his life once had now come full circle. Beneath the photograph was a folded deed and another note. "So you see, Lila, what you gave me wasn't new. It was a memory returned. My wife was just like you, kind, brave, unshaken by the cruelty of the world. She taught me that greatness isn't what we build but how we love. You reminded me of her every morning. And I wanted to make sure her kindness didn't end with me." She pressed the locket against her chest, her heart trembling. The door creaked open behind her. The lawyer returned quietly. "He wanted me to give you this," he said, placing a small remote on the desk. "It controls something outside." She followed him through the long hallway to the back of the mansion, where vast gardens stretched toward the hills. The rain had stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds, casting golden hues.